World War I was a conflict unlike any before. In the trenches, soldiers fought a brutal new kind of war with machine guns and poison gas. But the war wasn't confined to the battlefields. New technologies brought the horrors of war to civilians, forever changing how we think about conflict. This is the story of how Zeppelins, Gotha Bombers, and German U-boats brought terror from the skies and the seas. These new weapons of war, never before seen on such a scale, instilled fear and changed the course of the war. They tested the limits of technology and humanity. In the end, they remind us of the devastating costs of conflict. Imagine a massive airship, longer than a football field, floating silently across the night sky. That was the Zeppelin, a symbol of German technological might at the start of the war. Named after their inventor, Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, these airships were awe-inspiring. They could fly higher than any airplane at the time, reaching altitudes of over 10,000 feet. Zeppelins were initially used for reconnaissance, spying on enemy positions and movements. However, the Germans soon realized their potential for bombing. Armed with bombs and machine guns, Zeppelins began conducting raids on England, targeting factories, military bases, and even cities. While Zeppelins struck fear into the hearts of Londoners, a new threat emerged: the Gotha Bomber. These German heavy bombers, named after their manufacturer, were faster and more maneuverable than the lumbering airships. They could carry a heavier payload of bombs, making them a serious threat. Gotha bombers joined the Zeppelins in their bombing campaign, extending the reach of German air power. They attacked both day and night, targeting towns and cities across southern England. The psychological impact of these raids was significant. Civilians, once feeling safe in their homes, were now vulnerable to attack from above. Beneath the waves, another weapon of war was at work, striking fear into the hearts of sailors and civilians alike: the German U-boat. These underwater predators were a formidable force during both World Wars, but it was during World War I that they first made their mark. The sight of a periscope breaking the surface was enough to send shivers down the spine of any sailor. Short for Unterseeboot, meaning undersea boat, these submarines were a stealthy and deadly threat. The German Navy deployed them with the intent to disrupt and destroy the Allied supply lines. The U-boats were equipped with torpedoes and deck guns, making them versatile in their methods of attack. The crews, often young and highly trained, lived in cramped and challenging conditions, but their morale was bolstered by the significant impact they were having on the war effort. They operated in the Atlantic Ocean, sinking merchant ships carrying vital supplies to Britain. The goal was to cut off Britain's lifeline and force them into submission. The U-boats prowled the shipping lanes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Merchant ships, often unarmed and vulnerable, were easy targets. The loss of these ships and their cargoes had a devastating effect on the Allied war effort. U-boats operated using a strategy called unrestricted submarine warfare, meaning they would attack any ship, regardless of its nationality or cargo, that they deemed hostile. This aggressive tactic was designed to instill fear and uncertainty among the Allies. The U-boats would often strike without warning, giving their targets little chance to escape or defend themselves. This ruthless approach was effective but also controversial. This tactic was highly controversial, as it often resulted in the sinking of neutral ships and the loss of civilian lives. The indiscriminate nature of unrestricted submarine warfare drew widespread condemnation. Neutral countries whose ships were caught in the crossfire protested vehemently. The loss of civilian lives, particularly on passenger ships, was seen as a barbaric act that violated the rules of war. The sinking of the Lusitania, a British passenger liner, by a German U-boat in 1915, with the loss of over 1,000 lives, including 128 Americans, outraged the world and pushed the United States closer to war. The attack on the Lusitania was a turning point in public opinion. The outcry was immediate and intense, with newspapers around the world condemning the act. The tragedy highlighted the brutal reality of unrestricted submarine warfare and galvanized support for the Allied cause. It was a stark reminder of the human cost of war and the lengths to which nations would go to achieve victory. Section 5. Living with Fear. The impact on civilians. During World War I, the civilian population faced unprecedented challenges and dangers. The war brought the front lines to their doorsteps, making everyday life a constant struggle for survival. The impact of Zeppelins, Gotha Bombers, and U-boats on civilians was profound. These new forms of warfare introduced a terrifying element to the conflict as they could strike without warning, causing widespread destruction and panic. For the first time in history, civilians were vulnerable to attack from the air and sea. The sense of security that people once felt in their homes was shattered, and the reality of war became inescapable. The fear of air raids became a part of daily life. Air raid sirens would send people scrambling for cover, and the sound of bombs falling became all too familiar. The constant threat of attack created an atmosphere of anxiety and dread. People in London and other cities took to sleeping in underground shelters to escape the bombs. These makeshift refugees became a second home for many, offering a semblance of safety amidst the chaos above ground. The psychological toll of these attacks was immense. The constant stress and fear took a heavy toll on mental health, leading to widespread trauma and a sense of helplessness among the population. The constant fear of attack, the loss of life, and the disruption to daily life took a heavy toll on the morale of the British people. Communities were torn apart, and the social fabric of society was strained to its limits. The U-boat campaign also had a devastating impact. These stealthy submarines targeted merchant ships, disrupting supply lines and causing significant losses. The sinking of merchant ships led to shortages of food and other essential goods in Britain. The blockade and the destruction of supply ships meant that everyday items became scarce, leading to widespread hardship. People had to ration their food and other supplies. Ration books became a common sight, and long lines formed as people waited for their share of limited resources. This added another layer of difficulty to an already challenging existence. The war was no longer something happening far away on the battlefields. It had come home. The impact on civilians was profound and far-reaching, changing the course of their lives and leaving a lasting legacy of resilience and endurance. Section 6. Across the Atlantic, America joins the fight. The United States, initially neutral in the conflict, watched these developments with growing concern. The sinking of the Lusitania and the continued attacks on American ships and citizens by German U-boats outraged the American public. In April 1917, after much debate and hesitation, the United States declared war on Germany, officially entering World War I. America's entry into the war was a turning point. The United States, with its vast industrial resources and manpower, provided a much-needed boost to the Allied war effort. American soldiers, known as doughboys, arrived in Europe, bringing with them fresh troops and a renewed sense of purpose. Section 7. Turning the Tide, America's impact on the war. The arrival of American troops and supplies had a significant impact on the course of the war. The American Expeditionary Force, led by General John J. Pershing, helped bolster the depleted ranks of the Allied armies on the Western Front. American soldiers, fighting alongside their British, French, and other Allied comrades, helped push back the German offensive and turn the tide of the war. The American Navy also played a crucial role in combating the U-boat threat. American destroyers, equipped with sonar and depth charges, helped protect Allied shipping and hunt down German submarines. The U.S. Navy's efforts were instrumental in breaking the back of the German U-boat campaign. Section 8. The End of an Era. The Legacy of WWI Technology. World War I ended on November 11, 1918, with the signing of the Armistice of Compiègne. This momentous event marked the cessation of hostilities on the Western Front, bringing relief to millions who had endured 4 years of relentless conflict. The armistice was signed in a railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne, symbolizing the end of a war that had reshaped the world. The conflict had claimed the lives of millions and left Europe in ruins. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the landscape was scarred with trenches and craters. The human cost was staggering, with countless families mourning the loss of loved ones. The war's devastation extended beyond the battlefield, affecting every aspect of life in the affected regions. The war also left an indelible mark on the world, shaping the course of the 20th century. The aftermath saw nations grappling with political upheaval, economic hardship, and social change. The League of Nations was established in an effort to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again, though its effectiveness would later be questioned. The technological innovations of the war, including Zeppelins, Gotha Bombers, and U-boats, had a profound impact on warfare and society. These advancements revolutionized military strategy, introducing new dimensions of aerial and naval combat. The use of Zeppelins for reconnaissance and bombing missions demonstrated the potential of air power, while U-boats showcased the strategic importance of submarine warfare. These technologies demonstrated the devastating potential of air power and submarine warfare. The skies and seas became new frontiers of conflict, where battles could be fought far from traditional front lines. The psychological impact of these innovations was significant, as they introduced new fears and uncertainties for both military personnel and civilians. They also highlighted the vulnerability of civilian populations to attack from above and below. The war blurred the lines between combatants and non-combatants, as cities and towns became targets. Civilians had to adapt to new realities, seeking shelter from air raids and submarine threats. This shift in warfare underscored the need for new defensive measures and strategies. The lessons learned from World War I would shape military strategy and technological development for decades to come. The interwar period saw significant advancements in military technology as nations sought to prepare for future conflicts. The experiences of World War I served as a stark reminder of the destructive potential of modern warfare, influencing the strategies and policies of military leaders around the world. Section 9. Conclusion. Lessons from the Great War. The Zeppelins, Gotha Bombers, and U-boats of World War I serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. They also highlight the importance of international cooperation and diplomacy in preventing future wars. The war demonstrated that technological advancements, while capable of great good, can also be used for great destruction. It is our responsibility to learn from the mistakes of the past and work towards a more peaceful future. The poppy, a symbol of remembrance, serves as a poignant reminder of the sacrifices made during World War I. Let us honor the memory of those who perished by striving for a world where war is no longer an option.